This is Kate at the Library of Whispers. Today I'm going to read to you the second part of this lovely book. It is the official illustrated movie companion to The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King movie, and it's by Jude Fisher. So if you missed the first part, I'll put a link in the description of the video. So we were up to this chapter, Barad-dûr. Let's begin. Towers and battlements, tall as hills. Once he had forged the One Ring, Sauron used the power with which he had invested it to create the greatest fortress in Middle-earth, and he named it Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower. Here at the south end of the Mountains of Ash, in the midst of the volcanic Gorgoroth Plain, in the dread land of Mordor, he might dwell and further his treacherous plans for dominion. Fell runes and evil signs denoting the sorcery with which it was made cover its towering black walls. It is a place of untold horror. From the torture chambers in its dungeons, in which racks and wheels are manned by cruel orcs, its fiery factories of war, its eyeless prisons and mighty courts, to the vast iron crown at its apex, Barad-dûr climbs thousands of feet into grim skies as massive and forbidding as any mountain peak, and between the spiked iron pinnacles at the top of the tower, the great eye shimmers, constantly awake, and aware, constantly seeking the ring and the one who bears it. There we go. That's a great picture. Barad-dûr, Mount Doom. Nazgul. They once were kings of men. In the Second Age, Sauron ensnared 9 kings. Here they are. Proud rulers of the men of Middle-earth, by gifting each of them with a ring of power and promising them long life and endless power, and thus, being men and weak of will, they fell prey to his sorcery and were corrupted, so that their mortal essence fell away and they became wraiths, destined to live in the world as undead creatures, bound always to his servitude. They appear dressed all in flowing black robes and rusted mail, and carry long swords. Where their faces should be is only darkness, but their true selves, which can be seen only by one wearing the ring, is spectral and fearsome indeed. As wreathing, tormented beings, all of tattered grey and white they are, their expressions distorted by the greed and grief of their condition, their crowns a mockery of the honour and rule they have lost. The 9 are also known as ringwraiths, and as black riders when mounted on vast black steeds. They searched far and wide through the Shire for the one called Baggins, who was rumoured to have circlet. Above the mail he wears a short surcoat of black, and embroidered on the breast in silver is the white tree of Gondor. It is the livery once worn by Faramir, Boromir's brother, when he was a child, and while his heart will may be as strong as any grown man's, Pippin is still mistaken for a child as he walks the streets of Gondor's great city. But his first task in this uniform, though it is not a task entrusted by his new master, is to light the warning beacons at the summit of Mount Mindoluin, and thus to summon aid, as in answer the lights of the subsequent beacons can be seen over the White Mountains as far as Edoras. Meanwhile, Merry finds himself amongst the horse lords of the Riddermark, with King Theoden of Rohan. As the light of the warning beacon is seen, and the king summons all able-bodied men to muster at Dunharrow for the long ride to Minas Tirith. Determined to play his part in the war, Merry bravely offers the service of his sword to Theoden, who receives the offer graciously, deeming that Merry shall henceforth be an esquire of Rohan, and so he, like Pippin, is fitted out in the war accoutrements of his new master. The finely tooled leather armour of the Rohirrim, a helm and cloak. But at Dunharrow, great disappointment awaits him. The king releases him from his service, and will take him no further, for it is from there 3 days' hard riding to the beleaguered city, and the horses of the Rohirrim are too large and too strong for one as small as a hobbit to manage. On their own, he would only be a burden. Resigned to his fate, Merry turns away, only to be swept up by an anonymous rider and borne away to war. The Siege of Gondor. Courage will now be your best defence against the storm that is at hand. Outside the walls of Minas Tirith, Gondor's greatest city, orcish armies mass, 1,000 of them with their engines of war, each of them bearing flaming torches and an unquenchable hatred for their enemy. Above them swoop the Nazgul, striking fear into their own troops, as into the hearts of the defenders of Minas Tirith. The army of darkness hugely outnumbers the soldiery within, and with reports of a great fleet of corsairs sailing north from the hostile city of Umbar, and the whereabouts of the ring-bearer unknown, the future looks grim indeed for the free peoples of Middle-earth. But now Gandalf is conducting the defence of Minas Tirith, and he is indomitable. He commands that the defenders return to their stations, lined up along the battlements of the lower levels as they watch the orc army, tens of thousands strong, as the front of the first rank of the Rohirrim gallops into battle like a breaker crashing to the shore. The battle fury of their forefathers runs through King Theoden and his men. War horns blast out, sunlight gleams off helms and weaponry. Nothing can withstand that first charge. An entire company of orcs vanishes between trampling hooves, but having overcome the first wave of orcs, there are ever more, and then Haradrim and Mumakil, bearing huge war towers packed with Haradrim archers, which bellow as they are driven mercilessly to war by their Harad masters. They lumber into the sea of men, trampling and crushing riders and horses beneath their vast feet, impaling the hapless upon their spiked tusks, as rains of Harad arrows fall all around. Then it is that the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King of Angmar, swoops down, and his fell beast grabs up in its cruel claws both Theoden and his white stallion, Snowmane, and thus comes the death of the valiant King of Rohan. Then an unnamed rider steps into the breach, and with a single sweep of his shining sword beheads the vile monster on which the Witch King is mounted. It is an act of extraordinary courage, for surely none can withstand the Lord of the Nazgul. Indeed, ancient prophecy has foretold such, deeming that no living man can kill him. Yet, the Witch King of Angmar's antagonist is no mere man, but Éowyn, valorous shield maiden of Rohan, and niece of the fallen king, who was ridden from Dunharrow in disguise, driven by her desire for battle and her love for the Lord Aragorn. Now she and the hobbit whom she has borne all the way from the muster will try to avenge King Theoden's death, or they will die in the attempt. The Black Gate. Once the battle of the Bellenor fields is won, more by the dead than the living, all that is left for Aragorn and his allies to aid the quest to destroy the ring is to confront the Dark Lord in his own realm, and thus draw his attention away from Sam and Frodo as they make their lonely, desperate way into the land of shadow. After the slaughter on the Bellenor fields, their numbers are perilously few. They stand no chance of victory against the mighty army, where Sauron still maintains, within the Black Gate, the great iron rampart across the haunted pass into Mordor at the meeting of the Ephel Duath, the Mountains of Shadow, and the Ered Lithwai, the Ashen Mountains. Wearing the armour of his forebears, with the white tree of Gondor on his chest, and bearing the sword reforged, Aragorn, once known as Strider, leads the remainder of the 9 companions and the captains of the West to what must surely be their death. The lieutenant of the tower. At the gate they cry out a challenge which will be answered by one of the Dark Lord's chief servants. The apparition who rides out to meet them is the lieutenant of the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr, a creature of sorcery now grown advanced in evil and cruel cunning. For so long has he served his master that he no longer bears his own name, but is known merely as the Mouth of Sauron. He rides a huge and hideous black horse with a face like a frightful mask, more like a skull than a living head, and eyes of flame, and his own visage is hardly more fair. Gleeful and arrogant, the Mouth of Sauron his cousin Deagle to acquire the golden trinket they found while out fishing. Smeagol fell under the malevolent influence of the ring and wandered away from his homeland to take refuge from the light in the caves beneath the misty mountains, and it was there where he finally lost his precious to Frodo's uncle, Bilbo Baggins. Now, the two parts of him, Smeagol, who still vaguely remembers the time when he was not the slave of the ring, and is able to experience feelings which have not been entirely warped and wicked, and Gollum, whose only wish is to take back the ring for himself and see the thieves who carry it now dead and rotting, are warring for dominance of his soul. Shall he lead the hobbits, as he has promised, by a safe ways into the land of shadow, or shall he lead them to destruction and then reunite himself with the precious? Frodo's apparent treachery in allowing Faramir and his rangers to take Gollum prisoner in Ithilien has weighted the scales. Now the personality of Smeagol has been subsumed by the ravening greed of Gollum. He cannot kill the two hobbits himself. No, for the fat one is strong and bears a dreaded elven rope which chokes and burns. But if he cannot do the deed himself, he knows one who can. So it is, through Morgul Vale and up the stair of Cirith Ungol, that Gollum leads the hobbits. It is not a